Welcome to the PALLATT, the podcast about language learning and teacher training by IH London. My name's Becky, and today I will be talking with my colleague Laura about what life is like in London and why she loves living here. Hi Laura, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you, Becky?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for taking the time to speak to me today. So today we're going to be talking about the City of London. I've got quite a few questions about your favourite things to do there, your best experiences in London, and any tips you might have for other people visiting the city. How does that sound?
That sounds great.
Perfect. So my first question for you then is, can you tell me 3 words you would use to describe London?
It's difficult because you could use so many different words to describe the city. 3 words, okay. I would say life, because there's just so much life in London, so many different people, so many different cultures, nationalities, language, so much happening all the time. It feels like the city is alive. So I would say life. I would say everything in a similar sense, but London has everything that you could ever imagine, everything that you could ever want. Anything you can think of, you'll be able to find it here in London. It is the city of everything, I think. And finally, maybe it's a little bit boring, but I would say transport, because I grew up in a small town, a small village originally, and something I find amazing about London is how you can get to anywhere you want so easily, with the tube, the trains, the buses, with the bikes. It's just so easy to get around the city. And I think when we live in London, eventually we forget and we take it for granted. And then we go to a different village or town or city and it's not so easy to get around, or maybe you need a car. Whereas in London, we can get to anywhere we want pretty much instantly. So transport would be my final word. It's a bit boring, but yeah.
Fantastic. I love them. I think that's 3 really good choices. And I definitely agree about transport. London is completely connected. It's one of the best things about the city, in my opinion. Fantastic. So my next question is, what is your favourite time of year in London?
I really love this time of year. So it's August at the moment, the summer season. I think it's such a fantastic time of year in London. Obviously, the weather is better, but I think the city really comes alive. You know, the parks are full of people enjoying themselves, having picnics. The people on the River Thames enjoying the water. So many different outdoor events take place. You know, we have things like Wimbledon, loads of different sporting events, lots of different concerts, outdoor theatre, outdoor music. So I really feel that summertime for me is the time that I appreciate being in the city most.
Absolutely. And this week has been so beautiful. The weather is gorgeous. It's London at its best, I think, at the moment.
Exactly. It's amazing at the moment.
So, following on from that, you spoke about Wimbledon and sporting events. Do you have any events in particular that take place in London that you enjoy?
Yeah. So, like I said, the summer has so many different events happening. I mean, all year there are different events happening, but one that I always look forward to and I go to every summer is the Shakespeare summer season at the Globe Theatre. Because if you're willing to stand during the Shakespeare play, as they did several hundred years ago. If you're happy to stand in the theatre, you can get tickets for £5 for the summer productions. And I go every summer to the event, and I've seen some amazing plays. I've seen, I think, The Tempest, Midsummer Night's Dream, Much Ado About Nothing, The Merchant of Venice, King Lear, loads of amazing summer productions for £5 only, which is a bargain. So I think that's my favourite kind of event in the city.
So, can you tell us about a museum that you enjoy visiting? London has lots of different museums. Can you pick one favourite?
Yeah, it's really hard. I mean, like you said, there's so many. One that I particularly enjoyed is maybe less famous than some of the other ones. It's just called the London Museum, I think. And you can sort of walk around the exhibition, and it goes through the history of London. So from the Roman times, or pre-Roman times even, to then when there was a kind of settlement that I think was called Londinium. Someone will correct me, I'm sure, but I think London was called Londinium at some, maybe during the Roman times. And you can follow the exhibition through, the Dark Ages, medieval times, Renaissance, Industrial Revolution. It's just really, really interesting to see how the city has just grown so much, and how it's changed over the years, how it's developed. So that was one that I found really interesting, and it's less famous perhaps than some of the other museums, but I really, really enjoyed it.
That's my favourite museum as well in the whole of London. I think it's fascinating. It goes into...
Oh, really?
Yeah, absolutely, my favourite. It goes into so much depth, and it goes up to modern day as well. And you can learn about things that are happening now in the city, or the future of the city, all within, like you say, this journey through time. I think it's a fantastic museum.
It's really cool. It's worth going to.
Definitely. So, next question. What type of food do you enjoy eating in London? Do you have a favourite restaurant or area to eat out in?
Oh, it's tricky. I mean, it's like I was saying earlier, London has everything. So you can really find every kind of food, every cuisine in the city. So we're really spoilt for choice. But I always find that there are lots of really, really great Turkish restaurants in London. Yeah, just some really amazing ones where you can have sort of traditional Turkish cuisine, and I don't know why it's so good here in London, but it just seems particularly delicious. Every neighbourhood seems to have its own Turkish restaurant. Lots in the centre of the city as well, in Soho, around that area. But yeah, just amazing Turkish food. So tasty.
I've never been to any of the Turkish restaurants. I've seen lots of them, but I don't think I've ever eaten Turkish food in my life. So maybe next time I go out, I'll have to try some Turkish food.
I recommend it. There are so many good Turkish restaurants in London. Just really, really delicious food.
Okay, so obviously London has a lot of famous landmarks and iconic spots, but which monument or building or landmark in the city is your personal favourite?
Yeah, it's difficult because, as you said, there are so many. I always feel very lucky, when I come into International House in the morning and I cross over the bridge at Waterloo, just across from Waterloo train station, and you go over the Thames River, and then either side you can see so many different things. You can see the London Eye, you can see some of the kind of amazing architecture of the centre of the city. Towards the east, you can see sort of down towards the city and St. Paul's, and just as when you go over that bridge and you look around, you could just see so many different landmarks. So I suppose my favourite landmark is maybe the bridge itself, because from the bridge you can see so many different places, and I think you really get an idea of how much incredible architecture and how many amazing monuments there are in the city.
Absolutely. The view from the River Thames is indescribable because everything is built around the river. When you're stood, like you say, on a bridge in the middle of it, you can see so many famous places and iconic landmarks. It's, yeah, really a sight to behold. I completely agree.
Yeah, definitely.
So, what about parks? We were talking before about how gorgeous the weather is at the moment and how nice it is to be outside in London. Do you have a particular park that is your favourite?
Again, there are so many really pretty green spaces in London. There was a park that I went to last summer for the first time. I didn't actually know it existed, but it's called Bishop's Park, and it's next to a place called Fulham Palace. Um, so yeah, there's like a little palace there, sort of, old historic kind of stately home, and then a park around it, and it's near Putney, so southwest London, and it's nowhere near as famous as Hyde Park, for example, or Regent's Park, which are incredible. Of course, it's much smaller and much it's less well known, but it was really, really pretty. So I would recommend it. It's Bishop's Park and Fulham Palace. Really, really nice.
I've never heard of that, never been there. That's the wonderful thing about London, though. You can live there for years, go out every single day. It's such a big city, there will always be something new for tomorrow and next weekend and next week. There'll always be somewhere new to explore. So, after talking about all those things, what do you like doing the most in your free time in the city?
Probably just wandering around and then seeing what I find, seeing what's going on. I mean, at the weekends, I'll often just take the train into Waterloo, get off the train, and then just walk. So walk all along South Bank or cross over the bridge into sort of North Bank area and Trafalgar Square, Leicester Square, Covent Garden. Um, like you said, the city is so big and it has so much going on. It has everything, like I said earlier. I find that in my free time, I just like to wander. I just like to walk around the city and see what I find, because there will always be something new to find in London.
So, having spent so much time exploring the city, you must have some good tips, tricks, and advice for people who are coming to visit. Is there anything you can think of that might be useful, a useful insider tip for someone who's coming to the city to know?
Yeah, so again, something that I discovered a few years ago. It's a little bit different. You maybe wouldn't think about it being such a big city, but obviously we have the Thames River, as we've discussed, and you can do things like kayaking or stand-up paddleboarding on the Thames. So if you head down to Hampton Court Palace, which is very famous for being the home of King Henry VIII, if you kayak along that part of the Thames or paddleboard along that part of the Thames, it's amazing because the scenery is incredible. On a day like today in the summer, it's amazing. There's lots of other people out in their kayaks, on their paddleboards, or some people have boats as well. And it's just a really cool experience to be able to be on the water in such a massive city. It's maybe an activity you wouldn't necessarily associate with a city like London, but it's a bit different, and it's really enjoyable, particularly in the summer.
That sounds lovely. That sounds really, really fun. I can imagine it being quite peaceful as well on the river compared to the streets. It can sometimes be quite crazy, especially in the summer. But on the river, in a boat, nice and relaxing. That sounds lovely.
I recommend it. It's really nice.
So, what is your most memorable London moment? Something that's happened to you in London, or something you've experienced or seen, something that has been really enjoyable for you?
I think, I mean, just recently with all of the Jubilee celebrations for the Queen's Jubilee, that was a time where I really thought to myself, wow, I live in a really awesome city. Because there were lots of Jubilee celebrations all around the UK, but London definitely seemed to have a lot of the kind of big events, the ones that were on television. And sort of being a part of those, going to some of the different things that were taking place, I really felt so thankful and so happy to live in a city that's this awesome. So yeah, maybe it's because it's recent, it's fresh in my mind, but the Jubilee celebrations were definitely a very memorable London moment for me, for sure.
Definitely. I think that's a really good choice. There was so much going on, and everyone seemed to get involved and be feeling the spirit of the event. And yeah, it was a really, really nice time to be in the city. Definitely. So, my final question for you is, why should students choose to study in London, in your opinion?
It's a good question. I mean, I suppose it goes back to maybe the original question of the three words. London is just so full of life. It's so multicultural, so cosmopolitan, so diverse. There's so much happening. You can come any time of the year and it's amazing. We don't have a sort of an off season where things are a bit boring or things are a bit quiet. At all points throughout the year, the city is buzzing. It's full of life, full of energy, full of people, and yeah, full of lots of different people, lots of different things happening. So every day you could do something new. Every day you can try new food, go to a different museum, a different exhibition, a different event. It's impossible to complete London. I mean, people live in London their whole lives and they never finish exploring the city. So I think as a place to come and study, it's perfect because every single day that you're in London, you'll be able to have a different experience and meet lots of like-minded people as well to share those experiences with.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Anything you want to do, whatever your interests, whatever you want to experience, it's possible in London. Everything is there. Like you said at the beginning, everything.
Yeah, everything is here.
Well, that's all of my questions, Laura. So thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me and share your wisdom about London.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, see you again soon.
Speak to you soon. Bye.
Bye.